Beneath the surface of history lie shadows, whispered secrets and untold horrors that lurk just beyond the light. Tonight, we peel back the veil on moments where courage meets cruelty, and the line between heroism and nightmare blurs. What you are about to hear is a glimpse into a world locked behind closed doors, where survival demands sacrifice, and every choice carries a deadly cost. Dare you open this box? In the cool, misty English countryside stood Bletchley Park, an unassuming estate transformed into the nerve center of one of the most critical intelligence operations of the Second World War. While battles raged across continents and oceans, here a different kind of war was waged. One fought not with guns and tanks but with minds, codebooks and machines. This is the story of Clara Whitman, a young mathematician whose quiet brilliance helped crack the German Enigma code, changing the course of the war. Clara arrived at Bletchley in the autumn of 1940, recruited from Cambridge for her exceptional skills in logic and languages. She was one of many women brought into this secret world, many working as clerks or translators, but Clara's aptitude quickly set her apart. At first, she was assigned to transcribe intercepted messages, a monotonous task that gave her a close look at the encrypted German communications flooding in daily. Though these ciphertexts were gibberish to most, Clara's mind began to notice patterns, tiny irregularities in the otherwise impenetrable code. The Enigma machine was a marvel of engineering, a device that used rotating rotors to scramble messages into unintelligible strings of letters. German military units believed it was unbreakable. The Nazis had built confidence in its complexity, convinced that no Allied codebreaker could reverse engineer its settings fast enough to decipher their plans before they acted. Yet, the British cryptanalysts at Bletchley had a secret weapon: insight into the Enigma's mechanical structure, captured intelligence from spies, and, most importantly, relentless human determination. Clara joined a team led by the mathematician Alan Turing, who was developing a machine called the bomb, designed to simulate Enigma settings and speed up the process of decoding. But the work was grueling, and success was far from guaranteed. For every message decoded, dozens more remained locked. Clara spent countless nights hunched over sheets of intercepted text, experimenting with ciphers, creating hypotheses, and testing possibilities. Each failure was exhausting, yet the small victories were intoxicating. One autumn evening, Clara noticed a recurring sequence in the encoded messages that did not fit the usual pattern. The German operators had slipped into a predictable habit, unknowingly repeating parts of their encryption key for a series of messages related to submarine deployments in the Atlantic. This error, small but significant, became the breakthrough Clara had been searching for. By exploiting this flaw, she helped refine the bomb's algorithms to narrow down the possibilities faster than ever before. The impact was immediate and profound. The Allies could now anticipate the routes and attack plans of German U-boats, which had wreaked havoc on convoys supplying Britain. Shipping losses plummeted as the Royal Navy rerouted vessels away from deadly wolf packs lurking beneath the waves. This intelligence saved thousands of lives and ensured critical supplies of food, weapons, and fuel reached the island nation during its darkest hours. But the triumph came with a cost. The secrecy surrounding Bletchley was absolute. Even family and friends had no idea of Clara's work. She could never share her accomplishments or the burden of responsibility that came with knowing so much about enemy plans. The pressure was immense. One mistake or leak could unravel the entire Allied strategy. Clara also faced the challenges of being a woman in a predominantly male environment, often overlooked despite her expertise. Yet her determination never wavered. She became a mentor to new recruits, many of whom were women thrust into the world of cryptography for the first time. Together, they forged a sisterhood bound by secrecy and purpose, each understanding that their invisible work was vital to the war effort. In the winter of 1942, the team intercepted a crucial message detailing an impending surprise attack on an Allied convoy near the coast of Scotland. Thanks to Clara's refined decryption techniques, the British Navy was able to prepare an ambush, sinking several U-boats and thwarting the Axis operation. The victory was kept under wraps publicly, but within Bletchley Park, it was a moment of triumph and vindication. Beyond the submarine battles, the Codebreakers' work extended to many theaters, intercepting plans for Operation Barbarossa, tracking Luftwaffe movements during the Battle of Britain, and revealing Italian troop deployments in North Africa. Each decrypted message chipped away at the Axis power's ability to maintain the element of surprise. As the war drew to a close, the significance of Bletchley Park's achievements finally came to light. The secrecy was maintained well after 1945, and only decades later did the world learn of the intelligence breakthroughs that had shortened the conflict and saved millions. Clara Whitman's contributions, like those of countless others in the shadows, remained unsung for years, yet their legacy endures. In reflecting on her experiences, Clara often spoke of the paradox of war, how destruction and despair coexisted with ingenuity and hope. The machines they built were designed to decode death, but through their efforts, they helped preserve life. Bletchley Park became a testament to human intellect, collaboration, and sacrifice, proving that sometimes the quietest voices and the smallest discoveries can echo the loudest in history. The story of Clara Whitman and the Codebreakers is not just one of mathematics and machines. It is a story of courage and resilience in a world engulfed by chaos. It reminds us that behind every headline and battlefield lay countless individuals whose determination in silence shaped the fate of nations. In the shadows of Bletchley Park, they whispered the secrets that won the war. The dense tropical jungles of the Philippines held secrets the world rarely heard, stories of resilience, courage, and resistance during the brutal years of Japanese occupation in World War II. Among these stories was that of Captain Mateo Reyes, a local farmer turned guerrilla leader, whose small band of fighters waged a quiet but deadly war against the Imperial Japanese forces, refusing to surrender even as the archipelago was engulfed in flames. In late 1941, the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor marked the beginning of Japan's rapid expansion across the Pacific. The Philippines, then a U.S. Commonwealth, soon found itself under siege. Japanese troops overwhelmed the islands with ruthless efficiency, capturing Manila and forcing American and Filipino soldiers to retreat. Amidst the chaos, many chose to flee into the mountains and jungles rather than submit to occupation. Mateo Reyes was one of them. Before the war, Mateo was a simple man, a husband, father, and rice farmer. But the invasion transformed him into a guerrilla commander. Rallying neighbors and former soldiers, he formed a ragtag group known as the Bamboo Shadows, named for their ability to disappear into the dense foliage as if they were part of the forest itself. Their mission was clear: disrupt Japanese supply lines, gather intelligence, and assist any Allied forces that might return. Life in the jungle was harsh. Food was scarce, and the tropical climate offered little comfort. The Bamboo Shadows relied on their deep knowledge of the terrain, surviving off roots, wild fruits, and the kindness of villagers who risked their lives to provide shelter and news. The constant threat of Japanese patrols forced them to move stealthily, often traveling by night, leaving false trails, and using makeshift radios to stay connected with other resistance groups. Mateo's leadership was born not just of necessity but of conviction. He believed that every small victory, every act of sabotage, was a blow against the tyranny choking his homeland. His guerrillas raided Japanese supply depots, ambushed patrols, and destroyed communication lines. Though outgunned and outnumbered, their knowledge of the jungle gave them an edge. The enemy's frustration grew with each failed mission, making the Bamboo Shadows a symbol of defiance in a dark time. One of the most daring acts occurred in early 1944. The Japanese were preparing to move reinforcements to Leyte in anticipation of an Allied invasion. Mateo's group intercepted this intelligence through local contacts and launched a coordinated assault on a key bridge used for transporting troops and weapons. Using homemade explosives and timing their attack to coincide with a tropical storm, they succeeded in destroying the bridge, delaying Japanese movements and buying precious time for the advancing Allied forces. The invasion of Leyte in October 1944 marked a turning point. American forces, led by General Douglas MacArthur, returned to the Philippines with overwhelming power. But the guerrillas were vital, guiding troops through treacherous terrain, providing real-time intelligence on enemy positions, and continuing sabotage behind enemy lines. Mateo and his men became liaisons between the locals and the liberating forces, their knowledge proving indispensable in a complex, brutal campaign. Despite their successes, the cost was heavy. Japanese reprisals were savage. Villages suspected of harboring guerrillas were razed, civilians were tortured, and entire communities vanished under brutal crackdowns. Matteo himself lost family members, including his youngest son, caught in the crossfire of an ambush. The pain hardened his resolve rather than weakening it. As the war progressed, the Bamboo Shadows expanded their network, coordinating with other resistance cells across the islands. They sent messages via clandestine radio stations, used hidden mountain trails to move supplies, and worked with American intelligence agencies like the OSS to relay information. Their efforts became part of a broader mosaic of resistance that stretched across the occupied territories in Southeast Asia. The liberation of the Philippines was a bittersweet victory. While Allied forces reclaimed Manila and pushed the Japanese out, the destruction and loss left deep scars. Matteo Reyes returned to his village, forever changed by war. He helped rebuild his community, teaching younger generations the value of courage and unity. Yet, like many guerrilla fighters, he remained a shadowy figure, his deeds known mostly by those who had fought alongside him. In the years that followed, the story of the Bamboo Shadows faded from mainstream history. The spotlight remained on large-scale battles and political leaders, while the guerrilla fighters' contributions remained largely unrecognized outside their homeland. Yet the legacy of Matteo Reyes and his band endures in the oral histories passed down in Filipino families, in monuments tucked away in jungle clearings, and in the spirit of a nation forged in resistance. Their story is a testament to the power of ordinary people rising to extraordinary challenges, fighting not for glory or recognition, but for the simple hope of freedom. In the shadows of the bamboo, they held fast to their homeland, becoming ghosts in the jungle that haunted an empire. Through their struggle, the Philippines showed the world that the fight against tyranny took many forms, some violent, some silent, but all essential in the long and costly journey to liberation. Matteo Reyes and the Bamboo Shadows remind us that even the smallest sparks of resistance can ignite the flames of freedom. The winter of 1941 descended on Leningrad like a merciless ghost, blanketing the city in snow while Nazi artillery shells rained destruction from outside the encircling lines. The siege of Leningrad, one of the longest and deadliest sieges in history, trapped nearly 3 million civilians and soldiers within the city walls, cutting off supplies and plunging them into starvation and despair. Through the eyes of Nina Ivanova, a young girl growing up amidst the rubble, the horror and hope of those frozen days come to life. Nina was just 10 years old when the siege began in September 1941. The city she had known, bustling streets, vibrant markets, and the laughter of friends, transformed overnight into a cold, gray prison. The German army had surrounded Leningrad as part of Operation Barbarossa, aiming to crush Soviet resistance quickly and break the spirit of the Soviet Union's second-largest city. The first winter was the harshest. Temperatures plummeted well below freezing, and food supplies dwindled to near nothing. Ration cards distributed by the government offered crumbs of bread, but hunger gnawed relentlessly at the population. Families huddled in cramped apartments without heat, their faces gaunt and eyes hollow. Nina's diary, preserved by her surviving family, tells of days spent scavenging for anything edible, roots, boiled leather, even wallpaper paste. She wrote of the endless queues for bread, the growing silence of empty streets, and the unbearable cold that seeped into bones and hearts alike. Yet amidst the misery, there were moments of fierce determination. Her mother worked in a makeshift hospital, stitching wounds and comforting the dying, while her father, a factory worker, labored to keep essential war production alive. Nina helped by delivering messages, running errands, and caring for her younger siblings. Education continued in underground schools, where teachers refused to let the children lose hope or the skills they would need after the war. The city's defenders were heroic. Soldiers and civilians alike manned anti-aircraft guns, dug trenches, and built barricades. The siege of Leningrad was more than a military blockade, it was a test of human endurance. Despite the bombardments and constant threat of starvation, the people resisted with a spirit that baffled the Germans. One of the most haunting memories in Nina's diary describes the winter of 1942, when a brutal cold snap froze the Neva River, the city's lifeline. Trucks crossed the ice road, known as the Road of Life, bringing in the last supplies. But the route was perilous, bombed by German planes and vulnerable to artillery fire. Many drivers died in icy waters, their bodies lost beneath the frozen surface. Nina's family survived thanks to a combination of ration cards, barter with farmers who risked venturing close to the city, and the kindness of neighbors sharing whatever they could spare. But every day brought new losses. Friends disappeared, succumbing to hunger or disease. The city's population dwindled by hundreds of thousands by the time the siege finally lifted in January 1944. Amid the devastation, moments of humanity shone through. Despite the darkness, the people of Leningrad organized concerts, theater performances, and poetry readings to sustain morale. The composer Dmitri Shostakovich famously wrote his Seventh Symphony during the siege, a defiant anthem to the city's endurance. Nina attended some of these events, clutching her mother's hand as the haunting music filled bombed-out halls. The siege transformed Nina from a child into a witness of history's cruelest face and most resilient heart. Her diary reveals not just suffering but an unbreakable hope. Hope that the city would live, that her family would survive, and that peace would one day return. After the war, Nina became a teacher and writer, dedicating her life to preserving the memories of those dark years. She spoke often about the sacrifices made by ordinary people, emphasizing that survival was a collective act of courage, unity, and unwavering faith in the future. The siege of Leningrad left scars, physical and emotional, that shaped generations. It was a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure unimaginable hardship and to find meaning in the midst of ruin. Nina Ivanova's story reminds us that behind the numbers and battle strategies are lives shaped by fear, loss, love, and hope. In the silent ruins beneath the snow, the echoes of those days still whisper. Through the eyes of a child who saw her world shattered but never destroyed, the siege's true story emerges, one not just of survival but of humanity's most profound resilience. In the vast, sun-baked deserts of North Africa, the roar of tanks and the crackle of gunfire echoed across endless dunes, marking one of World War II's most pivotal struggles, the Battle of El Alamein. This fierce confrontation between the British 8th Army, commanded by General Bernard Montgomery, and the German Afrika Korps, led by the legendary Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, would shape the fate of the Mediterranean and the wider war. But amid the grand strategies and sweeping maneuvers, the story of Lieutenant David Sinclair, a British tank commander, reveals the grit, fear, and determination of the soldiers who fought for survival beneath the blistering sun. David Sinclair arrived in North Africa in the summer of 1942, fresh from training and eager to prove himself. The desert was unlike any battlefield he had imagined, relentless heat by day, freezing cold at night, and sand that infiltrated every crevice of men and machines. His unit, equipped with the British Cromwell tanks, was tasked with holding a critical line near the railway station at El Alamein, a small but strategic point that could not fall to the Axis powers. Opposing them was Rommel's Afrika Korps, a force celebrated for its daring tactics and tenacity. Rommel had led his troops across the desert with breathtaking speed, employing blitzkrieg-style strikes, ambushes, and feints to outmaneuver the Allies. Yet, the supply lines for the Axis were stretched dangerously thin, and the harsh environment took a toll on men and machinery alike. Sinclair quickly learned that desert warfare demanded more than firepower. It required instinct, teamwork, and an iron will. Tank crews battled not just enemy shells but sandstorms that could blind and immobilize vehicles, scarce water supplies, and the constant threat of mines buried beneath the shifting sands. Every mission was a gamble. The days leading up to the battle were tense. Montgomery had meticulously prepared his forces, building defenses, training new recruits, and gathering intelligence. His speeches inspired hope and discipline, emphasizing that El Alamein was the moment to stop Rommel's advance and begin pushing the Axis back. On the night of October 23, 1942, the battle began with a massive artillery bombardment followed by infantry and armored assaults. Sinclair's tank was among the spearhead units ordered to break through the Axis defenses. The fighting was chaotic and brutal. Tanks were struck by shells, catching fire and exploding in clouds of smoke and flame. Sinclair's crew faced moments of sheer terror as their vehicle was hit, but skilled repairs and quick decisions kept them fighting. Throughout the battle, Sinclair witnessed Rommel's tactical genius firsthand. The Desert Fox would counterattack relentlessly, exploiting weaknesses and launching surprise strikes. Yet, the British forces held firm, reinforced by fresh troops and improved supply lines, a stark contrast to the diminishing resources of the Axis. A turning point came when Sinclair's unit found itself surrounded near a ridge. Outnumbered and low on ammunition, they prepared for a last stand. With radio communications cut, Sinclair coordinated a daring escape under cover of darkness, navigating through minefields and enemy patrols. The successful breakout preserved valuable tanks and lives, boosting morale at a critical moment. The battle raged for weeks, marked by back-and-forth clashes that tested endurance and willpower. Eventually, Montgomery's strategy of attrition and overwhelming force prevailed. The Axis forces began a retreat, marking the beginning of the end for German and Italian ambitions in North Africa. Sinclair survived the battle but carried scars, both physical and mental. He lost comrades who had become like brothers and saw the desert claim dreams and lives with ruthless indifference. Yet, there was pride in their victory, a recognition that they had helped halt a formidable foe. The Battle of El Alamein was hailed by Churchill as a turning point in the war. It gave the Allies a vital foothold for the invasion of Italy and boosted morale across the Allied nations. But for men like David Sinclair, it was a crucible, a test of character in a barren landscape where courage and resilience were the difference between life and death. In later years, Sinclair would speak of the desert's harsh beauty and the camaraderie forged in adversity. He remembered the roar of engines, the whistle of shells, and the faces of those who fought beside him. A brotherhood bound not by rank or nationality, but by the shared will to survive and triumph. The story of El Alamein is not just about generals and grand strategy. It is about the soldiers in tanks, the engineers repairing tracks under fire, the medics treating wounds in sand-filled tents, and the relentless spirit of those who faced the desert's wrath. Through Lieutenant David Sinclair's eyes, the battle becomes a human story, a testament to iron will amid the shifting sands of war. The night of March 9, 1945, dawned like any other in Tokyo, yet it would become one of the most devastating nights in the history of aerial warfare. Under the command of General Curtis LeMay, the United States launched a massive incendiary bombing raid on Japan's capital, turning vast swaths of the city into an inferno. Among the millions caught in the flames was Hana Takahashi, a schoolteacher whose story reveals the human tragedy beneath the smoke and fire of total war. By early 1945, the tide of World War II had turned decisively against Imperial Japan. After years of relentless Allied advances across the Pacific and devastating losses in battles like Midway and Iwo Jima, Japan's cities were prime targets for strategic bombing designed to cripple industrial capacity and sap civilian morale. Tokyo, a sprawling metropolis with dense wooden buildings, was especially vulnerable. Hana lived in a modest neighborhood with her aging parents and younger brother. Despite the hardships of war, rationing, air raid drills, and the constant threat of bombings, she dedicated herself to teaching children, hoping to preserve some semblance of normalcy. The nightly air raid sirens were a grim reminder of the dangers lurking overhead, but hope lingered that the worst was behind them. On that fateful night, waves of B-29 Super Fortress bombers approached under cover of darkness, carrying thousands of incendiary bombs designed to ignite firestorms. The attack began with a barrage of explosives, followed by the release of napalm-like devices that set fire to wooden homes, shops, and schools. A wind-driven inferno engulfed the city, with flames leaping skyward and smoke choking the air. Hana's neighborhood was engulfed rapidly. She and her family rushed to the local air raid shelter, but it was soon overwhelmed by panicked crowds. Outside, the heat was unbearable, and the roar of the firestorm was deafening. Buildings collapsed in seconds, and the cityscape became a burning maze of chaos. Trapped beneath the ruins of their home after a partial collapse, Hana tended to her injured brother, refusing to leave him despite the danger. Hours later, rescuers found them, but many neighbors were not so fortunate. The death toll of the raid exceeded 100,000, and nearly 1 million people were left homeless. The firebombing of Tokyo was part of a broader strategy of total war, a doctrine where civilian centers became legitimate targets in an effort to break the enemy's will. The morality of such tactics remains fiercely debated. For those who lived through it, like Hana, the trauma was indelible. In the following months, Hana worked with relief efforts, organizing makeshift schools and shelters amid the ruins. She witnessed firsthand the resilience of her people, who clung to hope even as their world burned. The war's end in August 1945, hastened by the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, brought relief but also complicated grief. Hannah's story reminds us that the cost of war extends far beyond battlefields. It is etched in the lives of civilians caught in the crossfire, in the children who lost families, and in communities torn apart. The firebombing of Tokyo exposed the horrors of modern warfare and forced the world to reckon with the devastating impact of targeting cities. Decades later, Hannah became an advocate for peace and reconciliation, traveling to the United States to share her experiences and promote dialogue. She believed remembering the past was essential to preventing future conflicts. Through her voice, the flames over Tokyo speak not only of destruction but of endurance, compassion, and the enduring human spirit. The firebombing was a stark chapter in World War II's final phase, illustrating the brutal calculus of total war and the profound sacrifices made by ordinary people. Hannah Takahashi's journey through the inferno stands as a testament to survival amid devastation and the hope that even in the darkest nights, humanity can find a way to rebuild. The stories we've uncovered tonight are fragments of a darker truth, echoes of suffering, defiance, and broken humanity that refuse to fade. In the silence that follows, remember, history is not just what we choose to see, but what we dare to remember. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. The shadows remain, waiting, watching, reminding us that the past is never truly gone.